podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.
Thanks for choosing this free Anfield Index podcast. If you'd prefer to listen to this or any of our other shows without adverts, then now's the time to check out Anfield Index Pro. With AI Pro, you can supercharge your entire listening experience. You'll not only get all of our podcasts without the ads, but you'll have them far faster with our quick publish feature available exclusively for subscribers. AI Pro also puts you in the heart of our sound studio, with an option to listen to many of our shows live and interact with the podcasters in real time as the shows are recording. Upgrading couldn't be easier. AI Pro is available on all popular podcast platforms, and we have our own apps for Apple and Android. Just head on over to AnfieldIndexPro.com and get started today.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are, whatever you're doing, and welcome to another episode of Media Matters for Anfield Index. It's a bit of a different one this time, ladies and gents, isn't it? As the Reds were not successful in their clash at the Emirates and succumbed to a 3-1 defeat. But at the same time, I think it's fair to say it's not all doom and gloom as it could easily have been. And here to walk us through that and everything else going on and off the pitch at Anfield is the renowned and the respected David Lynch. David, bit of a different tone I'm asking you in this way, but how are we this morning?
Yeah, mostly just devastated our 100% record's gone. That is the saddest part of this whole thing, to be honest. But we spoke, didn't we, before we came on there? And I think there's some positives here and some sort of mitigating factors to get into. So maybe not as downbeat as maybe people would expect.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And in a good way, Twitter didn't seem to be having its usual meltdown after Liverpool defeat and destroying itself, going nuclear, etc. So, ladies and gents, we'll do the normal. We'll talk through the game. We'll talk about the fixtures coming up, the players possibly returning, even things that we may or may not see, and whether we'll see them in a TV documentary coming to your screen soon as well to talk about. So, yesterday, 3-1, it's an own goal that we get. Canate sent off. The result goes against us. And this is probably a loaded gun of a question I'm asking you here, but your honest thoughts on the performance overall?
Yeah, I think probably fair to maybe say the worst performance of the season. Yeah. I think, I just think they didn't really threaten enough in attack. They were quite easy to get out and in defence and got pressed out of it in midfield. So I think, you put those three elements together and it adds up to not a very good performance, really. And, like I say, I don't really know where to start in terms of getting into the mitigating factors. I think there's several of them, but I think, even accounting for all that, it's worth saying, isn't it, that, we're nearly up to 70 minutes and Liverpool were level. And they hadn't played very well at all. And I think, then they give away a goal in the most disastrous circumstances by two players who you would never expect to do that. And that is the key moment in the game for me. I think Liverpool would have loved to have played better and put on a better performance. And that's how you win at Arsenal. But ultimately, they weren't able to do that. And you've got to say, look, you're going away to, at worst, the third best team in the Premier League. Yeah. A team they've beaten Manchester City there this season. They're good at home. Liverpool beat them last time out, so they had a reason to sort of want to avenge that. And they absolutely knew, Arsenal as well, that if they lost this one, then they were 8 points behind and the title charge was over. They basically had only the Champions League left that they could possibly win, and that is obviously going to be extremely difficult to do. So, I think a combination of factors really went against Liverpool. And like I say, even though they were poor, and I think they were poor across the pitch from front to back, really, they were in the match. They were in the game. Yeah. We've seen Liverpool come out of games that they haven't played well and won them, or come away with a point. And you would have been delighted with the point in the circumstances. And I would have loved to have seen how those last 20 minutes might have gone if they hadn't been given the goal, because I think the pressure really would have started to ramp up on Arsenal, bit of desperation in the play, and then that opens up the game for counter-attacks. And Liverpool could have had a real goal, which it's just incredible, really, that they hung in that long because they weren't playing very well. And so, they did give the goal away in the end, and so that condemns you to a defeat that you would say was deserved on the merit of the performance. But even so, like I say, they were still in there at one point, and I just think it would have been so fascinating if he hadn't give that goal away, to just see how the pressure would have changed on both sides and whether that would have freed Liverpool up to maybe go on and win it.
it seems almost crazy to say, but like you're right, we were absolutely terrible pretty much for those 70 minutes. I still feel deep down, and Arsenal fans could pillar us for this. If we don't give them, and that's the phrase I'm using, give them the 2 goals essentially, I'm not sure they score. It wasn't like Alisson was flying across his goal and like making point blank saves or like off the line clearances. It just kind of had like that feeling of a bit of a nothingy game, so to speak, and the errors turned it really.
This is absolutely right, because you look at it and I thought Arsenal first 15, 20 minutes, you go 1-0 up, absolutely brilliant performance, and then cannot fault that. So I mean, they were great across the game, don't get me wrong, but I think the one area where they struggled was they were dominant in midfield and they were pressing Liverpool and they were turning them quite a lot. But I didn't feel like they were carving Liverpool open. That first 20 minutes aside, where they really did put together some opportunities. You have the Saka header, which he really should score. That's a big XG opportunity. And then obviously they scored the goal, which again, even the opening goal, an element of fortune in that it's a weak finish from Havertz. It could go anywhere, but it lands to Saka and he basically has an open goal to score into. That is, Liverpool rubbish around that goal. Don't get me wrong, Canate doesn't hold the line and it kills him because he's so scared of Martinelli down the left. But even then, a little bit of fortune, they get away with that one. And sometimes you need to get away with one in games like this. And, that's a big XG chance. The Saka header, as I mentioned. And then, of course, the second goal they score is, again, from a catastrophic error. And I think the XG for that is around 0.8. So you basically, I think Liverpool conceded around 3.5 XG, and that's, what was it, a record or something? Again, it was some statistic was knocking about around that. But about half of that was made up from, just certain situations. So that first 20 minutes where they were rubbish, and then Martinelli gets gifted almost 1 XG. It's, it wasn't like throughout this game, even though I thought Arsenal were dominant across the 90 minutes, they were carving Liverpool open. That for me is actually Arsenal's biggest problem under Arteta, is I don't think he's consistently found a way of getting the attack to produce. And last season really was a bit of an aberration in his reign, really, of them being a real attacking force. Other than that, they actually have kind of been a little bit like this, a little bit stiff in attack. And I thought you saw that Liverpool kind of, outside that first 20 minutes, had them at arm's length and then gave them a goal. It was like, I think you're absolutely right to point that out. And I think that XG total is actually kind of deceptive in terms of how the game went. I think it reflects correctly that Liverpool were rubbish in attack. They weren't very good, didn't produce a lot. But it makes Arsenal's attack look better than it was in terms of what they were, how much actual threat they were giving Liverpool and how busy, say, Alisson was. I did, as you say, he wasn't making an awful lot of saves or being particularly busy. So I thought that, for me, more than anything, sort of suggests that Liverpool were still in the game, because I think they were able to cope with what Arsenal were throwing at them. And as I say, had it opened up a little bit in those 20 minutes as Arsenal got a little bit desperate, Liverpool, the Kings, are killing things off, and that would have been a real opportunity for them. It's just so unfortunate they didn't get the chance to show that.
Yeah, it literally, there's that 2-minute period. You could feel it before and let's be clear, we gifted them, as we said, the second goal. There was, and it sounds mental to say this, but there was a slight nervousness in that stadium. You could feel it, like, how are we not winning this? Why are we not winning this? And then, everything else is kind of hindsight. But even at 1-0, I thought,
that first 20 minutes, as I said, thought Arsenal were electric, really, really played well. But I thought even after that, the crowd started to dip, because they weren't 2-0 up, they weren't 3-0 up. They were thinking, we haven't killed these off. And the crowd quieting down actually leads into the goal in terms of a bit of nervousness and Saliba not clearing the ball. And then Diaz nips in and Liverpool are level all of a sudden. That really sort of put a punch in things. But I think it was reflective of how the game was going in terms of, Liverpool weren't knocking on the door by any means, but they hadn't been killed off. And it wasn't, they were finding their way back into the game, and the crowd wasn't quite as loud as it had been before that. And Liverpool had continued that into the second half, and then unfortunately just had that absolutely terrible error, and that changed, that wins Arsenal the game effectively. But it sounds mad to say it when you look at the statistics of the game, like I say, the XG, to say that Liverpool were in it, but I absolutely believe they were. And I think Jurgen Klopp sort of reflected on that post-match. He admitted they weren't very good, but he also felt that a couple of things didn't go Liverpool's way, and if he had, they actually could have, from a not very good performance, come away with something.
Yeah, absolutely. I think everyone felt that. Jurgen Klopp felt that. But ultimately, you got that sense of, he wasn't majorly disappointed because he didn't look at it as an unfair result. I don't think any of us see it that way anymore in the end. Normally we ask who's man of the match, so I'm going to rephrase this. Does anyone come away with pass marks? Maybe that's the best way I can put it in this one.
Yeah, probably nobody really. I thought I like Diaz in terms of his work rate. I thought that persistence around the goal sort of summed him up. He grafted so hard in that game, and I think he got 3 shots, which is more than any Liverpool player. And so he was probably the one who was closest to his level. He obviously causes the goal as well. And I thought the other player who stood out for me was Alexis McAllister, who was sort of doing a one-man job in that midfield, holding it together. The only one who sort of showed up, really. I thought Jones and Gravenberch both had poor games, to be honest, in completely different ways. Gravenberch kind of anonymous, Jones on the ball a lot, but wasn't really completing his passes at his usual level, wasn't winning his duels as we're used to. And as I say, Gravenberch almost like a passenger. So, the talk around McAllister about the number 6, actually, it's kind of interesting that he was basically doing it on his own yesterday and did quite a good job. So I think he deserves a lot of praise for that. But as you say, not an awful lot of great performances in there.
Yeah, it's one of those because he's not pillaring everyone, but I agree. I thought McAllister, Joe's in flashes. He looked better as he went into that 2 in the second half with McAllister. Yeah. That gave us a little bit of solidity there, but I mean, they're walking away with 6 out of 10s, really, if you're doing ratings, aren't you, at best? So, yeah, we know we're not going to sort of clutch straws there too much. I mean, trying to lead some positives, when you look at the fixture list, this looks like the toughest one on paper out the way, doesn't it? And actually looking into the near future, especially February, again on paper, it doesn't look too bad, does it, when you glance?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so what they've got coming up now is I don't think any team above 15th even is it in the next 3. And then it's obviously Manchester City after that, which is massive, but it's a nice build up to that. So that's kind of helpful. And as you say, the away fixtures don't look anywhere near as tough from this point on. So that's really helpful. I think Arsenal have got some stinkers coming up as well, actually. Yeah. And maybe Manchester City is not as kind either. So that's a real positive to stick to. And also, like as I said at the start of the pod, in terms of you can go away to this team and get beaten. And so, you can, but there's no fixture left on the fixture list where you're feeling the same. Even Manchester City at Anfield, you look at and think, well, it's at Anfield and City's record there is absolutely woeful. So even that, you fancy Liverpool. So, and I think if they're going to win the Premier League, they do have to win that game regardless. So, there's loads of positives there. And I think another one to talk about is that, in terms of injuries, people coming back as well. We know that Endo is going to be back at the AXA today. Hopefully Mo Salah might even be in contention for Burnley. Szoboszlai looks like they left him out as a precaution by the sounds of things. It didn't sound like he got another, twang of his hamstring. I think it was maybe more he's felt a little bit of something and let's not risk it. So, the squad is starting to come together. They've got a week's rest now coming into it. And I actually think that week's rest is worth talking about, actually, because how dominant Arsenal were in this game physically. I thought they just swarmed Liverpool, didn't they, in midfield, and dominated them all over the pitch. It's worth noting that since Liverpool beat Arsenal at the Emirates, that was their 6th game they were coming into. It was Arsenal's 3rd. Now, when you see such a physical difference between the two sides, I don't know how you can't factor that in as a huge mitigation from Liverpool's side. They looked like they had a lot less energy for a good reason, really, and also, they may have come through this period where they've had a lot of injuries, keep ticking off the wins and they just kept on winning. But it does have an effect. I think Klopp had mentioned that he kind of looked into the players' eyes after the Chelsea win, and they put a lot into that, and they put a lot into the weeks preceding it, and a very small group of players because he hasn't had a lot of options for rotation. So it's no surprise, really, that it's come home to roost at a game that is already difficult enough on paper and a team who are absolutely determined not to get beat. And even then, a couple of moments have gone against Liverpool and they've ended up losing. And so I honestly, I think there's so many sort of positives to take away from what is obviously a really disappointing defeat and going forward. And, they've got a week's rest now in the build up to Burnley. And I think Burnley could, there's every chance they could be getting a bit of a hide in there, and that sets Liverpool up on a little run going into Manchester City. To get 3 wins going into that, it's absolutely game on then, isn't it?
Yeah, it is weird almost because we know how the end of the season is going to be with fixtures, but like you said, there's a week into Burnley, then there's a week into Brentford almost before the midweeks just ramp up all the way through. But it does get ignored, that Chelsea game. I mean, we were both there. we were on it from the first minute. I think it's told in the stats we ran about 9k further than Chelsea. It almost felt at the Emirates like a reversal of role, so to speak. They just couldn't get the legs going, essentially, when they were trying to, and like, probably use the right phrase. Arsenal were geared up for this and they swarmed them. And yeah, everything else, incidents happened from there. And I've given personally a lot of players passes in this just because I don't see how you could do anything but for Alisson, Van Dijk. We know what happened. Even Trent and what he's done just didn't look fit. Are you the same? Is it sort of passes across the board in this one?
Yeah, that's it. I mean, Alisson and Van Dijk, they never play poorly. They never do things like that, or maybe once a season maximum, and it's happened yesterday at a really bad time. But it's so easy to write those off. They are the best centre half and the best goalkeeper in the world, and they combined to make a horrible error that left an open goal. It's just, you hope it's not going to happen again. It probably won't. They're too good for that. So just one of those is very easy to write off. And I thought, thought Arsenal did a really good job of stopping him getting the ball in dangerous positions, but also he looked a little bit off it to me. And, he's had an injury. He's just coming back. He's feeling his way in. Maybe looking at his fitness there, maybe he wouldn't have started if Conor Bradley was available. Maybe the decision would have been made for the manager there. Would have just waited a little bit and let him have a little bit more training before he threw him back in, because he did look off it. But again, I'm seeing some absolutely mad takes about Trent, how, he's not good enough and he shouldn't have come back into the team and he shouldn't be anywhere near it. And it's like, well, Conor Bradley, absolutely wonderful when he came into the team. Don't get me wrong, phenomenal for an academy product to come in and play that way. And I think he's going to get a lot of games between now and the end of the season. But Liverpool were in that position before Conor Bradley came into the team.
Yeah.
They were top of the league. They were into the semi-finals of the League Cup. They'd just beaten Arsenal away with Trent in the team in the FA Cup that's when he picks up the injury. So absolute madness to me that he's getting so much stick. And people forget how good he was before he got that injury. That was seen as a potentially decisive blow for Liverpool. It's a miracle that they've kept winning without him. But you cannot keep a player of that quality out of the team for very long. And I'm sure he'll have easier afternoons than this, and he'll also come back to his influential bets in the coming weeks, especially because Liverpool are playing against sides where they're going to have to dominate possession, and we'll be having to look to a little bit of magic to unlock them. So Trent's absolutely key to that, and not his best afternoon, but no doubts over him as an absolutely world-class player, and he'll play a key role now in these coming weeks. Yeah,
there does seem to be a bit of a revisionism, shall we say, on social media about where we are and forgetting certain things. But yeah, that maybe always be the nature. And the two players I do want to talk about, and I want to talk about objectively, because I know you will have seen it, and we've talked about like Gakpo and Gravenberch coming in. They were the two that people looked at. I mean, the scrutiny, and maybe there's a bit of truth in both of these statements, is it harsh, or do you feel like you could understand why people looked at elements of their performance yesterday?
Yeah, let's start with Gravenberch, because I do feel it's a little bit harsh with him, because, what he did on the ball actually yesterday was some of the stuff was quite good in terms of evading challenges and moving the ball on. He actually completes a far higher percentage of his passes than Curtis Jones. And he wins, I think, 3 out of 6 duels, which again, Jones was nowhere near. If you win in half your duels, you're sort of kind of happy with that in most games. And he was in and around that. So, Gravenberch, the things he actually did, he didn't do too poorly. I think what his problem was that he struggled to get on the ball a lot. And you can blame him for that, definitely, because it's all about demanding it at times. But also sometimes it's about being found by your teammates. So I didn't think he was any more poor than Jones. And, Jones rightly has got more credit in the bank, don't get me wrong. But I think Gravenberch, what he did better than Jones. He executed far better. He just didn't see as much of the ball, which is unfortunate. So I don't think he deserves to be too harshly treated. And I do think there's an imbalance when him and Jones are used in that same midfield. It's so much better when Sobbers lies with one of the others, whether that's Gravenberch or Jones. Gravenberch doesn't seem a natural fit, and that right-hand side didn't kind of work that well, actually, throughout the whole match, really. So yeah. I feel a little bit for him around that. And, he's a young player being thrown in there because of an injury in a game he probably wouldn't have been used in because of the intensity that was expected. He is more at the moment at this season, until he gets a pre-season in him, he's more Europa League Cup sort of outings, isn't he? And he's helping Liverpool in a big way keep this sort of four-fronted attack on trophies going. So, not a game for him, and it didn't work out. But, like I say, didn't think he was any worse than Jones, who saw a lot more of the ball and was worse with it, and also didn't win his duels at all. So, Gravenberch seems to have taken up that mantle as the whipping boy at the moment. So I feel for him a bit around that. And Gakpo, I mean, we spoke pre-match. I'm a big Gakpo fan. I really, really like him. I think he's kind of underrated, but he was poor yesterday. There's no getting away from that. Again, I think a victim of Arsenal's setup, really, in terms of, they were so intense and pressing, and Jurgen Klopp said before the match, didn't he, that it was a tactical decision to use Gakpo instead of Nunes. And if that was true and it wasn't about the foot injury, then I think he would say he got that wrong, because I think Arsenal was so intense and he was so pressed on Liverpool that all Liverpool needed was an out ball, and Gakpo, for all his strengths, is absolutely not that. I mean, he completes 6 out of 11 passes, which is really poor, gets one shot, and he doesn't threaten enough in behind. That was the big miss. I mean, there are a couple of moments when he did, actually. I think, is it Gabriel cuts out that Trent Alexander-Arnold pass? It's a great bit of movement, great bit of defending. So Gakpo did show he's got that in the locker, and there's one where he spins his man as well. And I think, is it Gabriel who ends up with the yellow card around that situation as well?
Yeah.
Yeah, so he had showed he got it in the locker, but he's not quite as natural at doing that as Nunez, and he's not quite as electric pace-wise, is he? So, he just didn't seem a good fit for that game at all. But alongside that, I thought he didn't play well either. So, like I say, if it was a tactical decision, it was the wrong one, you'd say.
Yeah, it was a weird one from Jurgen Klopp, because I think we all thought it's the foot, that makes sense, we'll get Nunez for 20 minutes. But when he confirms it's tactical, I think we're all kind of like, hold on. We've all seen what Nunez brings, and just that pacing behind, and that changes the game. But hey-ho, I also thought, speaking of, if you mentioned Jurgen Klopp's tactical, were you surprised a little bit by Joe Gomez inverting and Trent pinned to the right-hand side? I think a lot of us were thinking, surely that should be the other way around, or we expected that to get Trent on the ball. Did that surprise you at all?
I wonder whether they were just trying to unsettle Arsenal by trying something a little bit different. You do have to do that from time to time. You can't go into every game with the same tactics. And Gomez is very, capable on the ball. So, sometimes that can work out. And I wonder as well if it kind of helped to get Trent a little bit more wide, which is what they were kind of trying to replicate what Bradley's been doing recently, is sort of hugging the touchline a little bit.
Yeah,
and then allowing your forwards to tuck inside and creating a kind of narrow front three. I wonder if that was what they were trying to. Obviously, it didn't work at all because Arsenal was so dominant in the game. But sometimes you're going to try things like that tactically and they won't work out. And it's one of those things. Everyone moans about Trent inverting, and then when he doesn't invert and he hugs the touchline like he used to do, there's complaints about that as well. Where I just think sometimes your tactics don't work out. And even if the tactics had worked out yesterday, I thought Arsenal were kind of just dominating things in terms of the press and the physicality that Liverpool would have struggled anyway. So it's just one of those, isn't it? And I'm sure Trent will have better games. Joe Gomez, interesting decision to make now around him at left back going forward. So yeah, but it's just one of those that I think it's quite easy to write that one off as a failed tactical experiment.
I don't need a VPN. I've got nothing to hide. This is what I used to tell myself before I hooked up with LibertyShield.com. Not only is my home internet now fully encrypted, but I can now access all the websites I want, whenever I want, and do so from absolutely anywhere. As a Liverpool fan, I love to know I can now watch every match, regardless of whether it's on UK TV or not. My Liberty Shield VPN makes sure nothing is blocked and guarantees me super fast streaming speed throughout that match. You can get connected right now with their software package, which includes a 48-hour no-obligation free trial and instant access to their apps for Apple, Android, Fire TV, PC, Mac and Android TV. Or go a step further like I have and get one of their pre-configured VPN routers. These small but powerful devices allow you to easily connect every device in your home to VPN, making it the perfect solution for smart TVs, Mac boxes, and games consoles. Visit LibertyShield.com today and use coupon code AIVPN25 to get 25% off at checkout.
Yeah, and speaking of failures, Liverpool are definitely not going to retain the Fair Play League award this year, are they? As another red card for Konate this time. Any complaints for you at all over that one?
No, I think Klopp's right to say, why doesn't Gabriel get one from the Nunes challenge later on? It's pretty similar situations, aren't they? But, sometimes you get them, sometimes you don't. I don't think Konate can complain. Kind of annoy him, really. I think that was a poor decision from him to make the challenge as well, because it wasn't like Arsenal were absolutely in on goal, or maybe he thought they were. He just didn't need to do it, because the real pain is not to lose him for the final 5 minutes of a game you've already lost. It's to lose him for Burnley next up, isn't it? That's the real shame. So I thought it was a poor decision from him, and he didn't really have a great game. So maybe his head was a little bit chocker, and that can happen. But he's been fantastic this season, so don't want to be too harsh.
Yeah, it was the only thing I was thinking, especially with Konate and Van Dijk and how dominant they are aerially. They let the ball bounce a lot yesterday. I just thought at times, like for that ball, just put a head on it. Maybe it's the old 50p and it goes, at least just clear it. All the trouble came from bouncing balls. I
think a lot of that. Well, interestingly, they both won 6 out of 6 aerial duels yesterday. But you're right about letting the ball bounce, because even if you win the aerial duel in that situation, you can't get power on the header. You're heading it up. And I think a lot of it he was kind of worried about. They're always trying to get a header back to the keeper or trying to get possession back, because they're worried. Because Arsenal was so sharp on second balls. Again, that goes back to their physicality. They were swarming Liverpool. Because Arsenal were sharp on those second balls, Liverpool were a little bit panicky around where they were heading it initially, and worried that an Arsenal player was going to scoop it up and then they'd be straight back on the attack and they'd be disorganised in defence. So that was a big part of it. And again, you got to give credit to Arsenal around that in terms of the way that they played the game, and that got in Liverpool's head massively.
Yeah, we'll put a big underline, write it off, and move on to next week. I think it's fair for that Arsenal performance. And a couple of off the field things that I do want to ask you as well. I mean, I'm sure you've seen the stories like we have. Disney Plus is the latest one, isn't it? As the stories that it's around £10 million and a documentary value to Liverpool behind the scenes. We all know Jurgen Klopp's comments on this previously. He was pretty unabridged in what he'd said, but how would I put this? There's a lot of conspiracy theories as well now, isn't there, about how that's going? What are your honest thoughts on this?
Yeah, I mean, right, this sums it up. So the fact that people believe that the Klopp is going because of the documentary. Now, we know now, so apparently Disney are close, I think it was Lewis Steele reported it the day that the £10 million deal is close to Disney. So people genuinely think that the FSG would risk losing, the greatest manager they've ever had, one of Liverpool's greatest of all time, for £10 million. The money that Klopp brings in merchandising and success and trophies and prize money, it eclipses that to an unbelievable degree. And people think that they're so dead set on having a documentary that they would say, you know what, Jurgen, sorry, you can go. We're not bothered. We're gonna take the 10 million. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. And I thought they made it kind of clear in the statement, Liverpool, in terms of, look, there's agreed areas for filming, that it's not going to be in the dressing room. So they've obviously sat down with the manager and said, look, if you are going to go, can we do this documentary? You have the complete control over where the cameras can go and X, Y, and Z editorial decisions. And he said, yeah, okay, I'll absolutely do that. And I think that he's clearly fine with it. It just wouldn't get to this point that FSG have forced it through to lose him. And if it was such a sticking point, he would just quit on the spot. So I find it absolutely mad that people are still pushing that idea. I just want to vehemently rule that out. It's complete nonsense that there's any link between the two things. Apart from that, Klopp has been more open to the idea because he is leaving and because he wants to leave already.
Yeah, it does seem bobbins. I mean, like, even if people do believe this for a bit, do you not think the fans would stop this happening? If they got wind that was the case, you think there's been protests before? If you think there wouldn't be protests that this was the case, it would be insane beyond belief what you'd see at Anfield. But yeah, hopefully that does fully put that one to bed. And it went to bed. The January window has finally passed. I mean, there was. It seemed like it was all quiet on the Western Front completely, but there is just a few I do want to ask you about, because deadline day brought a few stories. There was, I think it's Soleil, it's pronounced, that Salzburg was mentioned, that Romano said Liverpool had looked at him but made a choice not to go for it. And then the Kelleher bid from Forest, that sort of came in deadline day from nowhere, around 15 million. Honest thoughts on those two? Are those just don't put any stock in it, or is there, you think there might be something in Kelleher and even in the future as well?
I think with the Solé stuff, it's very much sounds like was offered to, was offered to by an agent and nothing really more to it than that. I mean, Jurgen Klopp sort of was really sort of, convincing on this in terms of the summer plans were affected by Quanz's emergence, so they decided not to sign someone, and therefore I don't think they're going to undermine that at the moment. I still think there's an interesting conversation to have around what they do at centre half in the summer. If Joe Gomez isn't going to be at left back anymore because you've got Conor Bradley, then he can be left or right back because you've got Tsimikas, Robertson, Conor Bradley, Alexander Arnold. He can be a centre half, so you are back to four. If they believe in Quansah, which I believe, they clearly do, because they decided not to sign in the summer because he was there. So, I'm no doubt they're looking at Solé. He's 23 years old. He's in that right age bracket. He's playing in a decent league for obviously Salzburg, who they look to sign centre halves of a similar sort of profile to Liverpool, and they've got a similar look at those sort of things. So I've no doubt they're looking at him, but again, I don't think that guarantees anything. And the fact that he turned it down, the opportunity was offered to them, it doesn't really come as a big surprise to me, because I think Liverpool are fairly well stocked in that position between now and the end of the season at least. And in terms of Kelleher, an interesting one that Forest would think they would even try it at 15 million. I think Liverpool are going to ask for more. You look at, I think Don King said that James Trafford went to Burnley for around 19 million, and that should be the benchmark. Liverpool have got a keeper that's won the League Cup in Quevin Kelleher and is about to get playing another final. So he's clearly a quality goalkeeper, and they should be expecting a little bit more than 15 million. And to lose him mid-season doesn't make sense. He just, for Kelleher's own, for him really, just to stick around and have another chance at winning the League Cup, and then at the end of the season, let's have a look at your future then. I just think it makes more sense for all parties really. And going to Forest, which is a crazy club at the minute as well, it just doesn't look like a good career move to me.
Timing's everything, as they say, and the last day of the window makes it an absolute no-go. It just seems a silly, ridiculous move. It does have the feel, though, if Forest stay up and there's a FFP case and all that, I know naturally, and they're probably not the only ones, but if that move was made at the start of the summer, it's not unbelievable, is it? Or beyond the realms of belief, something could develop. But yeah, last day of the transfer window in January, absolute bobbins. And the only other one I wanted to ask you about, any surprise that, as quite a few reported, Bobby Clark had approaches, but they said, no, he's staying. And I get he's had minutes. I suppose the question people are going to say is, all the midfielders are coming back, it appears. Where is he going to get minutes now, realistically?
Yeah, I'm kind of surprised they didn't let him go. Maybe the offers that came in, I think Derby County was one of them. They just didn't think there was enough guarantee for him for minutes there, or he wasn't playing the right type of football, or they just thought it wasn't going to be a good loan for him. Maybe there's that is always a factor in these things. I do wonder whether it says anything about maybe Stefan Bajcetic about when is he going to be available? Because if he isn't until very late in the season, then maybe they think they just need that little bit of extra cover to get them through. So maybe it could be anything to do with that, but we'll have to see. I do hope he gets minutes, and to be honest, I think he's maybe not going to play very much between now and the end of the season, but there is value still in these players being around and training and playing academy games. I think Klopp made the point around Conor Bradley, didn't he, in terms of, he'd had that loan move, but other than that, a lot of time has been spent in the Liverpool academy and the training with the first team. A lot of development happens in that period. You don't necessarily need to be out playing games to be out there, to have this huge breakthrough. I mean, Quansah actually, he had half a season at Bristol Rovers, and now he's at the Liverpool first team, so and hasn't let anyone down at all yet. So it just shows you, yes, experience can be really good for some players, and they need it, but some players are fine without it. And if you're training at the right level, then you're showing that you're ready. And so, maybe they think with Bobby Clark, it wasn't an absolute must that he needed to go out this in the January window.
He has, to be fair, looked really good when he's come in as well. He's looked up to pace, not like a kid just coming into it at the same time. Yeah, it will be interesting to see how that one develops. And this is almost all related to Burnley, because we almost feel like we wish the game was tomorrow, don't we? We'll get over there, straight back into it. Probably the players feel that way. a bit off the pitch, because I know you mentioned the story on it, was your story about Annie Road and the upper being developed, and there was hopes for that being ready for Burnley. Is there anything further on that? Are the club still hopeful, or is that going to roll on?
Yeah, I still think it's slightly up in the air whether it be ready, but there's a hope it's going to be there. So next few days are absolutely crucial. Could kind of go either way really in terms of whether they get it ready or not. But it's not one to rule out yet. So that keep an eye on that over this week. I would say could be a development on that front.
Yeah, that would be a big one, isn't it? To get a full house at Anfield would be special. And other positives that you hope for Burnley, which we're all looking for, and I'll kind of do it as a job lot. It could be Endo, it could be Salah, Szoboszlai back. I know we've talked about Szoboszlai, hopefully it's precaution. And I know you even wrote about it this morning for Endo, that is it right that he's expected back anytime now as well? And Salah, are we just waiting?
Yeah, so with Endo, definitely, I'd expect him to be in the squad for Burnley. He should be back at the AXA today, so they'll have a look at him. And if he's not reporting any issues, then, straight back into full training and in the squad, which is a nice boost to Jurgen Klopp's options, particularly not necessarily in this period where they've got 2 kind of clean weeks, but obviously things are going to ramp up and you're going to need everyone. So nice for him to have a little build up to getting back up to speed as well and back into playing Liverpool football. And then, hopefully he can have a big influence. And Szoboszlai, as I said, yeah, hope that's precautionary. Obviously, they knew that definitely Arsenal, they didn't want to risk him for. But after that, it doesn't sound like he's re-injured it. So, fingers crossed that settles down and he can be in the squad for Burnley. And Salah is just very much a day-by-day injury. It is with these hamstring injuries. You've just got to take your time until it feels right. And you don't want to push it too early. So be absolutely marvellous if you could get him in the squad for Burnley. And this is, this big period coming up to get him fit. And then you're looking at almost a fully fit Liverpool squad then, aren't you?
Yeah.
By Chetic and Matip aside, and it couldn't be, couldn't pick a better time really to get that back together, because so many games, so many challenges coming up, and Liverpool are going to absolutely need everyone.
It's a weird question, but does it almost feel like at this point, starting from today almost, it's another mini pre-season in the sense of, it's about getting players back. We have got, this is the last time we'll probably have it, real space in between games. It almost feels like it's about getting players back and getting them ready for this final block of the season. Is that a fair analogy?
Yeah, it kind of feels like the running starts here. I think, obviously you can just put that Arsenal game to bed now, and we spoke about the reasons, the mitigating factors there. I think it's quite easy to just cut that off now and say, right, okay, reset. We're getting everybody back here. We're going to have the full squad. Let's go for this. Let's give it everything we can between now and the end of the season and see where we end up. And I just think it's, timing wise, Klopp talked about the kind of, there has been some element of fortune about Liverpool's injuries in terms of like it's been one right back out, one right back in, and same in every other position. What happened in the number 6 position as well. But we're finally getting to the point where he's going to have a full squad to choose from, and I just think that's massive in terms of the quality of training. The ability to rotate through this period so that you're putting out 100% physical performance in every game, and you're not getting run all over Arsenal like they were on Sunday. So, I wouldn't expect that to happen in many other games anyway. There's not many teams can do that other than, your Arsenal, Manchester City, and obviously Liverpool themselves. But, still being able to put that 100% into every game is going to be massive. So it feels like this week now building up to Burnley, it just feels like a little chance to reset, loads of talks in training and let's go for it. And it's exciting. I'm really looking forward to this period now, because I just think, yeah, I can quite easily write that Arsenal defeat off, and Liverpool are in great position, better than I would have ever dreamed at the start of the season. So, lot to look forward to. Let's go for it.
Yeah, we'd have snapped your hand off for this at the start of the season to be talking like this. No two ways about it. And the final section, ladies and gents, the normal questions from the viewers. There wasn't as many this week. Maybe everyone's a bit down, so to speak, but who knows? But this one was it, and this came up in a few different ways. One guy actually made me laugh with this. He goes, "We're all going to talk about the other games, but it all just comes down to City v Liverpool at Anfield." That's how he worded it. Is there an essence of understanding what he's put in there? Is that how you're kind of seeing the blocks hopefully falling into place?
Well, yeah, Jurgen Klopp won't be looking at it like this, because he'll know, there's 3 games coming up that are very winnable, but you have to go and win them. Brentford away is kind of still tricky, even though they're struggling a bit at the moment, particularly with Ivan Toney back. That's not an easy game by any means. You've got to be very, very careful there, and Liverpool know that. But in terms of the City game, I think you know, I'd say I wouldn't say it's pivotal in the sense that if Liverpool win that, they go and win the league. But I absolutely don't think they can win the league if they don't win that game. I think they need to take 3 points off City if they can. I just think that's just massive. And to do, at Anfield where they're so strong and City are really struggling, struggled in recent years. You have to win that game. You have to put that gap between yourselves and City and hope that that's going to be enough. That you can then match their results over the remainder of the season. But there's not a world I can see where Liverpool don't win that game and they go on to win the league. So I think it's fair to say it's a massive game.
Yeah, it does feel a little bit like all roads lead there, but you've got to get to that road first of all. And a few came in with this, and I get it. And we talked about Kelleher and the poor timing. A few were suggesting, though, they wouldn't be surprised just because of age, profile, everything like that. If this does feel like it is his last season at Anfield, can you see that, or do you think he is happy in that almost number 2 role?
No, I think he'll go this summer. I think there was potential for it to happen last summer if the right opportunity presented itself, but it didn't in the end because Brighton, Brentford were all kind of looking for goalies of similar profile, and they actually both went for kind of more experience in that position when they ultimately pulled the trigger. But Kelleher's got another season under his belt, played more Europa League, played in the League Cup, got Liverpool to a final again. Yeah. Hopefully he can go and score the winning penalty in that again. And I just think, he's got more experience under his belt now, and he'll really will hope to move on in the summer. It's all about opportunity. So will that move come up? But I think he will push hard to go and feel like he's achieved all he can at Liverpool at this point.
Which is fair. It's hard to see how you can achieve more as number 2. And the brass tacks about you're not going to replace Alisson. So, got a call to make in the summer. And the final one, Conor Bradley, and I kind of wanted to finish on this one because obviously it was tragic what happened. Everyone extends the condolences and thoughts to sort of the Bradley family from a footballing perspective. I mean, we talk about you've got to have the shirt taken off you, and the start he's had, it really is amazing. We've talked about it now. Burnley, if he does, and this is the right way I think to phrase it, if he does make himself available for Burnley, would you want to see him keep that shirt based on what Trent's happened, or are you thinking more we need to get Trent, Robbo, those players back up to speed? How do you see that one?
I think as good as he's been, we don't know, by the way, how long his period out of the team is going to last or away from the squad. So, and absolutely send condolences to his family. Absolutely tragic news. But in terms of we don't know how long he's going to be away. But if he's back for Burnley, I still think you've got to put Trent back in there because I think people forget how influential he was in games like Burnley. There will be games where maybe you do see less of the ball, and maybe you do want someone who's a bit more defensively minded in that right back slot. But I don't think it's Burnley at home where Liverpool will absolutely dominate possession, and Burnley are a little bit goal shy anyway. They need Trent's magic on the pitch, and you absolutely have to start him in these games. I know you're only as good as your last game, so everyone thinks Trent's absolutely terrible now because he wasn't great at Arsenal, and Conor Bradley's been fantastic, so he's a superior player now. But the disrespect that Trent gets is just baffling to me. He's one of the best players in the world, full stop. And there's a reason that Liverpool were in such a good position with him in the team. He was unbelievable prior to picking up that injury. So he needs to start against Burnley, and I hope puts on a dominant performance. He just needs to get that little bit of match fitness back and sharpness. And again, you won't be getting pressed to death or be up against someone as good as Martinelli when we play Burnley at home. So, getting back in the team, he can hopefully show everyone what he's about again and remind people that, you talk about literally one of the best in the world. So, like I say, he does get disrespected, and I kind of don't like that. And I want him to come back in and show what he's about.
Yeah, it does seem crazy, this revisionism. Listen, if everyone's as good as their last game, you could understand why Jurgen Klopp's leaving because his entire spine was...
they're in a relegation battle.
Yeah, exactly. Pretty disastrous yesterday. But this is still one of the world's best players. Sort of 9 assists, 3 goals already. We shouldn't revise anything. Let's just hope. Let's hope that everything goes, well in terms of Trent's fitness, getting back to normal, and we'll see what happens with Conor Bradley. I mean, a weird question to ask, but it is right to say, because I know people are going to be asking us, David, about this pod and say, this sounds very jovial for a team that played poorly yesterday and lost 3-1 and, all these. But we've talked about it thoroughly. It's right to still be optimistic that all the prizes are still in sight, isn't it?
Yeah. I just can't sum it up better than you can lose to Arsenal away. They're a good side and they can outplay you when they're playing at home. That it can happen to anyone. It happened to Manchester City, who everyone now is convinced they're just going to steamroller the league. So it can happen. It's fine. It's absolutely fine. Liverpool won't have to play an away game as tough as that, you'd hope, between now and the end of the season, or certainly not on paper, up against that sort of quality and well-coached team. So, and they're getting players back. They were missing some players yesterday, and even so, they were still in the game. So I just think you add all those points up, and they're still top of the league, by the way, with the Premier League title still in their hands. It's totally up to them that they could, whether they win it or not. They can, if they win every game between now and the end of the season, they will be lifting that trophy in May. So, they're just in an unbelievable position with a fantastic manager and a great squad that's getting stronger, getting players back. I haven't even touched on the fact that Thiago's back in the mix, by the way. We've added him as a January signing alongside all the other players that are about to come back, like Mohamed Salah, who's not bad, by the way. It's a great position they're in, and days like yesterday can happen. You can get your first defeat in 6 months in the league at a ground like Arsenal's. It can happen. Too many positives for me to sort of cling to at the moment. If they lose to Burnley, maybe there's questions to be asked, but I don't expect that to happen. I think Liverpool are getting a little run again now, and if they do that, then they're in with a shot, aren't they, winning the league, and not just winning the league, they're in all the other competitions as well, with maybe a trophy to lift this month. So much to look forward to. I would advise people not to dwell on the negatives, because they've been so few and far between up to this point in the season. Yes, there were loads yesterday. But that's it, you can have these aberrations, these things happen. Let's move on quickly. You've got a world-class manager. He doesn't lose two on the bounce very often at all, does he? So I'm sure that won't happen, and Liverpool will be straight back on track, and so much to look forward to.
And literally, maybe time is everything, as I said earlier in the pod. Virgil van Dijk has just put on his social media, all in caps locks, "We will bounce back. See you Saturday." So yeah, Virgil's feeling it. Well, that's it for me. I'm off in the car to jump down the M57. But all it leaves me to say is, David, thanks for lifting us a bit. Thanks for your time and insight. It's much appreciated.
No, thanks for having me. It was quite cathartic, that one.
Yeah, we all got it out, I think, there. And ladies and gents, that was another Media Matters for Anfield Index.
We hope you enjoyed listening to this Anfield Index show. Please be sure to subscribe to our channel so future podcasts find their way to your device automatically. There's nothing quite like fan engagement, and we'd love to know what you think of anything discussed on this show. The best way to get in touch is over on our free Discord community, where both podcasters and listeners debate the hottest LFC topics 24/7. Sign up free now at anfieldindex.com/Discord. You won't regret it. You can also follow us on Twitter at Anfield Index, and find us on Facebook by searching for Anfield Index. Oh, and before you go, we'd love it if you could leave us a 5-star review on your favourite podcast app. It only takes a couple of seconds, and it means the world to the people who create these free shows.
Sports Social Podcast Network.